Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Adam. Ask is actually an acronym, not to ask me a question specifically. Ironically, my name is Adam, and Ask is an acronym for Always Seek Knowledge. There's several other purposes for that acronym, but the one that resonates most often and quite frequently with me is the Always Seek Knowledge. I feel like I'm always looking for little bits of information and not necessarily the, what would we say, the religious coveted tree of knowledge where it was don't partake from the tree of knowledge. But I truly believe that the more you know and the more you understand, the far better it is to basically function through life. If you understand certain things, you're far more able to kind of tackle the small things in life. Knowing that which lies ahead, as well as kind of what you're going through and realizing and understanding the past that you've been through. Anyway, that's all for another podcast. But ASK, the acronym, is Always Seek Knowledge. Obviously, you're here today listening to the program, so you are one of us. You're looking to seek knowledge. So welcome to the program. In today's episode, habits of high achievers. What you do daily with purpose defines your results. If this already resonates with you, we look forward to you sticking around and listening to more. If you think this might resonate with someone else, might be helpful information for a family or friend or someone you know, certainly click like or subscribe, as well as share this link to anyone you might know that could find this information valuable. And or if you know of a friend who would be interested in being part of the Always Seek Knowledge Army, we do this weekly, Always Seeking Knowledge. So let's get started with the show. The habits of high achievers aren't simply luckier than the average person. They've mastered the art of consistent, purposeful habits, drive long-term success by understanding and integrating these habits in their daily routine. And you can accelerate your progress towards your most ambitious goal. So most people that we look at, I wouldn't say that they're lucky. They are doing things in the background that you and I aren't doing. We could take, for example, just a quick share, an actor, right? Actor or actress. And you see them on stage, or you see them in a production in the movies or a sitcom or whatever, and you're like, yeah, boy, lucky. They just show up and they make it look so easy and they get paid an obnoxious amount of money. And it's, yeah, exactly. That's what you're seeing on the surface. That's the tip of the iceberg. What most likely you don't see is all of the relevant things that we're going to talk about today. And this is the case with everything. I think acting is the most obvious, where it seems easy. They make it look easy. That's probably the definition of acting, is that they're making it look easy. And they also are probably the most publicized as far as what their actual income is. You know, Forbes 500, or just, hey, this movie star's making this, or this sitcom star's making that. And so you only get to see these surface things. And sure, it doesn't make sense. But I believe that they practice as well as CEOs and anybody who's running a Fortune 500 or even a Fortune 100 company. They are all practicing every one of these steps that we're going to talk about today. And the reason I share with you these wonderful steps is that you too can be in that same position. You too, by practicing each one of these steps, can be in that position, either building in your company that you're currently with, building your own company and empire, or just being what I call a megapreneur. So if you're interested in being any one of those, then you're just as excited as I am to get started, and let's understand more of the high achiever. First of all, they start with clarity and purpose, right? We've talked many times about the why. What is your why? High achievers know exactly what they want and why they want it. This clarity helps them prioritize actions and align with their bigger vision. They also set meaningful goals. They don't set vague general targets. Instead, they focus on, and we've talked about it before, SMART goals. Those are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. You can search in our other blog post. We did go over SMART goals a few episodes ago in more detail. But having those, knowing your why and setting those SMART goals is really the foundation for high achievers. They consistently stand on those rocks, those pedestals. They consistently, every time they might get away from something, consistently go back to that point of beginning. That is their beginning. That is their foundation. If they have a bad day, if they struggle, they go back to why. If something was created, a goal wasn't obtained, then they go back and ask themselves the same questions. Was it specific? Was it measurable? Was the understanding of its achievability slightly off? Is it relevant? You know, should this be something that we're working so hard towards today, or do we need to work on a few other things and then come back to achieving this goal? They're constantly rearranging and understanding where things need to be in place and what to focus on first, what is most paramount, and then working on the others. And again, that's kind of a little bit of moving pieces on the chessboard of understanding what's the most effective, timely, and relevant move to make. So do you already see how high achievers might be not necessarily smarter, but just thinking a little different? Great. Pat yourself on the back, smile, and celebrate. You're already seeing things different. Now let's continue. Consistent morning routines. You know, they start the day with intention, activities like meditation, journaling, quick workout, prime the mind and body for peak performance. If you're already doing this, great. If not, start looking into some of these small routines. In today's world, even on YouTube, the channel you're most likely watching or listening to this, you can pull up some really great videos of some 10, 15-minute workouts. Participate a little bit. You really don't need to get ready and get suited up and get a good pair of shoes and get a gym membership and get in the car. All of that makes it way too difficult. Just simply get done with this episode, click over to a routine. In fact, one of the things that I do is I have a morning playlist, right? So a little bit of meditation, a little bit of what my friend Uncle Tony Robbins, he does what's called priming. You can do that in any way that you feel most comfortable. His is a great template to start with, and it's breathing, it's gratitude, it's thinking, both in the past, in the present, and in the future, most definitely putting yourself into that mindset, doing 10 to 15 minutes of exercise. And if you do that consistently every day, I guarantee you, and I speak from personal experience, that that will already have changed your life. And if you do that at the beginning of your day, you have already set yourself up for success. You've already changed your mindset. You've already changed how you physically are in the world. And as my other buddy, Dr. James, speaks of the whole neurochemical balancing and how things are going on in our body, you've already got all that started. You are stoking the fire for success. Now, once you've gotten yourself ready in the morning, right, the next thing we're going to step into is your high value first tasks. Tackle the most important challenge early, right? When you're clear, when you've got the energy, when your purpose is so fresh in your mind, you honestly can tackle anything. So take that big oh my gosh, I don't know how to handle this and take care of it. It could be maybe making some phone calls to collaborate with some investors. Maybe it's pitching that new idea to a potential customer. Do that first. Do that while your energy is high, while you're, again, the whole neurochemical thing, but it's also your mindset because you know your why. Everything is fresh and you can literally sort of come at someone, your customer, your client, the person you're negotiating with, you come at them with not only a calm, gratitude, clarity, full of purpose, energy. Quite frankly, you're almost unstoppable. If you ask any sports athlete like boxers and some of the multiple arts, forgive me, boy, I really butchered that up, but the mixed martial arts, they train and they train and they train. Again, the stuff you don't see, the behind the scenes, much like an actor, they're daily getting up and just going through the routines out on the mat, in the pit, wherever their training location is, they're doing this process. And if you were to get them after, they do the process of training. Right after that is almost the prime time that they want to be fighting. Why? Because they're sharp. They know all the moves. They're ready for action. It's interesting. There was the basketball player. I forget his name now, but the basketball player that basically he would go and shoot baskets after the game when he was most tired. Why? He was also training and conditioning himself to not slow down, that when that last buzzer goes at the fourth quarter, that the game's over and you get to stop. No, they were conditioning their body that even though the buzzer goes, it's time to keep moving and staying in motion. And this can be the case for you as well, as you have that activity and you're getting worked up in your personal life and knowing your why and meditating and being grateful and writing and just all the stuff that you're doing, and then you tackle that task, man, you are unstoppable because you are absolutely in your best form. And quite frankly, it's also a good routine to possibly get into at the end of the day, just to remind yourself that the day's not over until you say it's over. So if you want to do that routine in reverse, again, you kind of want to calm yourself down before bed. But if you really want to go at this, do some stretching exercises, maybe a little bit more yoga than cardio, but do that at the end of the day. Kind of wind down and stretch and release and have gratitude. So anything that's kind of like that's stuck to you in the day, just release that, right? You want to get rid of the tension. Personally, I enjoy a little cup of tea, calm down, some good breathing, and then I go to bed. I sleep rather well because I've let all that go. Tomorrow's a new day and we can tackle it then. Anyway, I digress, but I just am saying that you need to be at your prime when you're tackling these big events. And if you can only do one big event a day, so be it. You're building your muscles and strength. So start with one big thing and then maybe start tackling two big things or a big thing and two small things and work your way up. But certainly tackle the most important challenges early. Also, part of tackling these big tasks or little tasks is structure work blocks. And this entails some deep focus. Time blocking is really important. High achievers often schedule periods of deep, uninterrupted work. Phone in the other room, door closed, do not disturb signs. It's not being rude. It's self-care, quite frankly, because it's you taking care of you. If you're working from home, if you're running a business and you're getting things started, close the door and say, hey, it's my work time. I'm working from home, but I'm doing this. Many times you'll see that, high CEOs and entrepreneurs and whatnot, and they're traveling and have multiple businesses and doing all this stuff. But you know what they have? They have an office. Sometimes it's a really nice office. Sometimes it's an office in a really great location. It may have a view. I tell you, one of the coolest offices I ever had was on the south side of Denver, Colorado. And we were on like the 17th floor and it looked to the west. So in the distance, you could see the snow-covered Rocky Mountains. Rather impressive, as well as if you looked below, you could see the traffic from the tech center known as South Denver. Something to be said for just looking out at that level and seeing things. There's something to be said for that peace of mind, that moment of clarity. You know, when there's the busy noise of the city street below, but yet it's quiet in your space, you almost in a way have that difference of separation where you have the clarity, but you can also see the noise and the activity outside. And it's really a great example of positioning yourself to be in that quiet space and that time block, and to look out and go, wow, the world's busy out there, but I'm in here, I'm at peace, and I'm focused, and then get to that task. I know in several different offices that I've had in various of careers of mine that I had multiple desks that I found most effective. I had my working desk where my computer and my phone and everything was set up. And then in that same room off in the distance in the corner, I had what was called my negotiating. So when a client or customer came to my office, I had a separate desk that was clear of the phone, of the computer. We were negotiating. We were having that conversation. We were doing paperwork. And that it was also an example, we're not going to get distracted with the computer. We're not going to get distracted with the phone. We are strictly doing pen to paper contractual negotiations. I found this immensely effective, not only for myself, because I would keep my phone on my desk, not at the negotiating table. I didn't have a telephone that was going to bother me. I didn't have my monitors in front of me so that an email pop-up was going to distract me. And it literally was almost a 90-degree turn from my desk to the negotiating table. So I literally was giving my business sort of the cold shoulder, if you will, if you could picture that, because it was always to my right. My desk was to the right. The negotiating table was in front of me. This is profound because you're focusing on that task at hand. Many times if I had a project or in the day, if I started to see conflict with meetings or setting something up, maybe I was putting the file together for a new client, I went to the negotiating table and I would spread things out and put things in order. And I could focus on making sure that everything was put in its proper place for file and recording purposes. This, especially for real estate, was just, it was important. You had to keep those documents in check. So again, one of the things to share with you is you've got to separate yourself. And it's not being rude. Don't think that, well, I always have to be there for my family. Close the door and focus on your business. Trust me, they're going to be more appreciative that you're successful in business than you were there for every question, every beck, every call, whatever it was that was happening at that moment. Sometimes you have to turn it off. Now, granted, there are some emergencies, let's be fair, but not everything is an emergency, and there needs to be that individual clarity as to what's most important and when you can and cannot be disturbed. Now, don't get yourself too worked up as well about getting stuff done in this time block, and that a time block includes you basically being married to your desk or your office space for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day and just being mind numb. You need to take regular breaks. Short mental resets improve and improve your concentration as well as your creativity. I found myself, the office I spoke of is that I would step away from my desk, turn around and look out the window. It allowed for clarity. So find yourself standing up, maybe going to get that hot cup of coffee or tea, maybe a fresh glass of water. Maybe you need to take care of your personal things, but standing up and kind of turning around, getting a different perspective, physically stepping away from your workspace, again, is a profound action, not only physically, and as my good friend Dr. James Rouse says, it changes the chemicals. It gets stuff riled up when you stand up, when you walk around, when you step away from something. It sort of resets and re-triggers things, and then you can come back, sit at your workspace with, again, clear intentions and focus. You may need to step away from a project just to go maybe stand, look out a window, walk back and forth in a room, just to ruminate your why. And this is a discipline action, by the way. Let me be clear about that. It is a discipline that you're going to have to step away from what you're so intensely working on to go walk maybe in a room, another room, the living room, maybe walk outside, wherever it is in your space, but you have to get away from your workstation, and you may strictly just be focused on why are you doing this? Again, to not only build up that mental muscle, but it also helps repurpose and refocus what it is that you're contemplating. And then once you go, oh yeah, I remember my why, or there's a new aspect of my why, then you go back to your workspace, and now you're completely engaged with your work and with that thought process, with that fresh new mindset. Many people find that 25-minute focus and then 5-minute break can be most efficient. I'm about a 90-minute person myself. I get in for about 90 minutes, do a lot of intense things, and then I step out. I may grab a snack, I may grab some water, I may just get up. I walk in my living room. It's an elongated room, so I definitely have some space. One of the things I also like to do is I love to play golf. And so I have a little putting green in the living room. Again, it's quite elongated, so plenty of room for that. And I'll just hit the ball a couple times, and it refocuses whatever it was I was doing before. I'm doing something different. And I know it's kind of senseless, but it's a switch, just like a light switch. You turn it on, light comes on, and you come back in the room and you turn the light off. It's just doing something different, right? Much like the stop technique that we've talked about in other episodes. It's the same thing, but a little bit on a micro, where you're just stepping, doing something different, changing your thought pattern and bringing it back. If you're interested more about the stop technique, be sure to look in the blog list to see other podcasts where we have talked about the stop technique. Again, these are the habits of high achievers. All of these are tremendously relevant. And by practicing each one of them, you'll find yourself becoming each day a high achiever. Let's continue. Lifelong learning and continuous improvement. Daily reading or skill development. High achievers allocate time to learn something new each day. Read books, take courses, or practical new skills. Hey, newsflash, if you're listening to this or reading this at the moment, you are already a high achiever. You are practicing continuous improvement. You're interested in learning more from someone else. I found many of what I've learned in life was from watching others and seeing what others did, seeing how they did something, and either doing it similar or crafting it to make it my own, but nonetheless, I still learn from them. So consistent learning will help keep you adaptable and quite frankly, ahead of the curve. Music is entertaining. Listening to podcast shows, kind of entertaining. It helps separate us a little bit from the grind. Nothing wrong with it. But if you do find yourself listening to more music and listening to more podcasts and more, dare I say, entertaining yourself, I have to be upfront with you and say that that's not the habit of a high achiever. High achievers are listening to other educators. High achievers are listening to other people like themselves. Podcasts, for instance, the entrepreneurs that are talking about things that they've done, the negotiation hurdles that they've overcome, that is learning. I will also say that you probably want to subscribe to some level of continuous learning in your field. Is there not necessarily a CEO or COO or CFO or any of the C-suites individuals, but even like a professor, is there a academy, is there an institute where they're sharing information that's relevant to your business? That is what you want to be listening to. And if you're spending any level of time in the car at Automobile University, this is where most of my education, quite frankly, came from. While I was driving around in my car, going from appointment to appointment each day, I was continuously listening to other people in my field back in the day with cassettes and CDs about their different practices and stuff that they conducted that made their business, as well as from motivational speakers that discussed how to have that different mindset. And by listening to that, also reinforced how I felt grateful in the morning, as mentioned earlier, and how I feel grateful at the end of the day. So again, just constantly be learning how to adjust yourself to always be able to handle those tasks at hand. And part of that is having that gratitude and knowing your why is the next thing, which is embracing feedback. They're actively seeking constructive criticism and use it to refine their strategies. A willingness to learn from both success and failure is the key to sustainable growth. I know many people don't like the term constructive criticism, but quite frankly, it's true. If you understand something, good or bad, success or failure, and you, here we go, learn to construct from that information, now you're building the steps of success. I think that's where that phrase comes from, constructive criticism. Yes, somebody's going to be harsh with how they see things. Somebody's going to give you a bad review. Somebody is going to say that the plan you brought together became just a crazy failure. Well, that's great. Pat yourself on the back, smile, and celebrate, because you have just graduated a learning experience. And what do you do from learning experiences is you construct a better way, a different way, a more improved way of doing that task. So embrace feedback. And again, having that grateful mindset, it's going to allow you to accept that feedback and not take it personal. Success is not personal. Health and wellness is also a priority. As we talked about starting your day, regular exercise. Physical activity boosts your energy, mood, and mental clarity, enabling you, the high achiever, to handle the demands of your schedule. You may find yourself as you're building this business and becoming this high achiever that you're going to spend 18 to 20 hours a day on your feet. Can you currently handle 18 to 20 hours a day on your feet? Many people say that they want to travel and they want to run a company and a business and travel and see the world. Well, I don't know when the last time you traveled is, but it's not the most joyful experience. You need that energy and stamina to be able to tackle not only the moving around, the being on your feet, the long hour flights, the maybe a couple of short sleepless nights, and keeping that energy up. And again, going back to your why. You may find yourself one day as this high achiever processing like I do and say, man, why am I doing this? But because I've trained myself and I've already asked this question several other times, which has gotten me through things, I no longer say it with a sigh. I actually keep my head up. I keep looking forward. And as soon as I feel the slightest bit of tired, guess what? that thing already pops up like right in front of me. It's the right in the frontal cortex. It's right visually in front of my eyes. I already see my why. I've already trained myself to see my why. I don't even have to ask the question anymore. I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it. And you can too. To be successful and to be a high achiever is start to practice this now and it becomes a habit. Mindful nutrition and sleep. You know, proper meals and sufficient rest are really a non-negotiable. And like I said, there might be some short sleep nights or some travel events where your schedule gets thrown off and that slight bit of jet lag. It's much easier to handle that if you're primed and you're ready, if your health, if your immune system, if all of the chemicals in your body are processing and they're not at peak performance and they're not being weighed down by junk food and snacks and not eating properly, not exercising. You can have that energy to sort of sustain through this. High achievers understand that physical well-being underpins their ability to perform at their peak. And a lot of this is the discipline to know when to sleep. So when you do have an opportunity to maybe get some shut-eye, go ahead and take that sleep. Don't find yourself engaging in a movie just because you happen to be traveling on a plane. Get some sleep, knowing that as soon as that plane lands, you've got that important presentation with your next new client. That's what high achievers do. Or they get a little bit of sleep and then begin priming themselves on the plane, not waiting until they land, preparing themselves for that meeting, knowing that once that plane lands, now you're in the car, now you're in traffic, now someone's engaging in conversation and all the other attributes that occur between you landing and getting to that meeting. Well, you're going to have a hard time finding that quiet. But what you do know is in that airplane, in that quietness, you can begin getting yourself primed for that day ahead. Again, there's a little level of discipline with high achievers. Positive mindset and self-reflection. Affirmations and visualization. The reinforcing power, empowering beliefs. Using visualization techniques to mentally rehearse success. Remember, as I mentioned, priming and getting ready. As you start your day in that meditative state, knowing what you're doing for that day, maybe you have a couple of appointments with some successful individuals or some clients. If you're already seeing yourself negotiating for that positive outcome at the beginning of the day, when that event gets there, because you've already rehearsed it, you're more likely to get a positive outcome. Because not only have you trained your mind and you've worked on your posture and your stance, maybe even thrown a few objections at yourself, when you are actually sitting physically in that meeting, you've already tackled half of that experience. And so your body doesn't go into a flight or fight mode. It's because it's rehearsed and it's calm and it's understanding. And quite frankly, you'll find yourself thinking much clearer. You'll be on your toes. You'll be more responsive. And like I said, having already visualized a positive outcome, I'm not going to say you'd be surprised, but you'd be surprised. You already know it's a positive outcome. You've already seen it. So when it becomes a positive outcome, you've already predicted the future. See how that makes sense? And since we're on the subject, if it doesn't have a positive outcome, but that's the way that you saw it, you also, I'm going to say it, have the clarity when that occurs to sit back and ruminate and think about the occurrence. What was it that that made the deal go sideways? What was it that just didn't bring it together? Because you have rehearsed and exercised, you are in that mindset of, oh, okay, well, it could have gone that way, but you're also in the position of clarity to see what didn't happen and to be able to learn immediately from that experience. Again, this is high achievers. This is what we do. Instead of kind of getting there and being hustled and a little bit excited about the meeting and a little bit nervous and not sure how it's going to happen and kind of fumbling through with the conversation and the verbiage and the presentation. And when you're presented with questions, you're not sure how to answer them. And as you answer a question, you're still thinking in your mind that you answered the previous question correctly or not. And that's still rolling around in your mind. And yeah, it's going to go bad. And then when someone does, maybe, it's give you some feedback, or when it doesn't go the way that you even think it should, let alone how you planned, because again, you didn't plan, you will then find yourself frustrated. You will then take it personal. Then you'll be offended. And as my good friend, Dr. James Rouse would say, now all the chemicals are going in the wrong direction. And now they're colliding and hitting each other. And quite frankly, if you've experienced any level of jet lag, you're going to walk out of that meeting feeling like the plane just hit you, because you're going to be beat up, both emotionally, physically, and chemically. But if you go in there with that high state of energy, with that positive mindset, even if something doesn't go right, you still have that calmness to be able to accept and see the lesson learned, to at least record the events that happen, so that when you do get back to your quiet space, which I recommend to do immediately, and maybe that's the cab ride somewhere, maybe it's just sitting in the lobby, maybe it's going to a coffee shop, don't necessarily run away from something, an event like that. Sit down and breathe and make sure that you're really recording all of that energy, all of the events that just took place, to learn from them, both your successes and your failures, no matter which way it goes. If it's a good deal, celebrate, smile, pat yourself on the back, jump up and down, whatever your joyful expression might be, throw your hand in the air, but immediately get back into that state of understanding so that you can record what happened. And if it was good, you repeat it. If it was bad, you learn from it. Again, these are the habits of high achievers. And it's the discipline to do that, not just go crazy and say, hey, I'm going to celebrate and I'm going to go do something. Got to stay focused. So a positive mindset and self-reflection. This mindset practice helps build resilience and confidence. Remember, no matter how the meeting goes, you walk out with your shoulders, because you either won something, celebrate, learn from that win, or you lost something and you learn something and celebrate from that win. You never walk away empty-handed. And as long as you always remember that, you're always going to have that positive mindset, because it's a win-win. Journaling and gratitude. I know we had talked about this earlier as part of the morning routine. Write down your thoughts, lessons, and things you are grateful for, because this can reduce and maintain a forward-looking perspective. So just as I mentioned, in the morning, be grateful for something. Be grateful for that meeting. Be grateful that that meeting is going to be successful in your mind, and even say it. I'm ready. Not getting ready. You are ready. There's a whole nother episode on words we use, and we'll get there. But you're not getting ready. I'm ready for success today. You're not getting ready. I'm ready for that positive meeting today. I'm ready for that successful outcome. Journaling and gratitude, both in the morning, writing down things, and then in the evening, also writing down things to be grateful. State what was good about the day. State what you learned. Because as I've always stated, what we write, we invite. So as you're writing down your gratitude for the day, at the end of the day, you're almost setting up the template for success for the next day, because you're already showing gratitude for what's happened, and maybe even jot down how you're looking forward to what tomorrow is. If you already know what your tomorrow looks like, or you go to bed, state that positivity of what tomorrow. You know, you have a big meeting with a client or customer, write down, I'm looking forward to tomorrow's meeting. It's going to be successful. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Going to, whatever that positive outcome is, you write it down, because that's what you're inviting. And then you're going to sleep on that, and your mind's going to get adjusted. And the chemicals are going to get all arranged so that when you wake up and you have a moment of gratitude in the morning, and you're ready for this event that's going to take place. And it allows you to sort of get rid of that energy that's just not good for us, which is part of our animalistic instinct, is the fight or flight. And if something starts going sideways, we panic, and then we build up energy, and it's the adrenaline going through our body. And then we start doing things we normally wouldn't do because we're reacting. So when you're journaling and you have a grateful mindset, you're no longer reacting. You're already seeing things that have been planned out. Because you wrote them down, they're already happening. That's a whole nother universal lesson. But like I said, what we write, we invite. So journaling and gratitude are important. Write down your lessons. Again, that quiet time after that success, write down what worked. If it was not so successful, write down those things. And so, you know, I like spiral books just because they keep things together. I can put a date on the top of it. I can put what the meeting was with. And I have several spiral books. One is my daily journal. I have one for personal events. I have one for my business events. If there's a personal win, I write it down. If it's a business win, I write it down. My journal, my daily journal, quite frankly, is gratitude. And I'm a little sidebar here for you. But it's an exercise that requires discipline. So I say this with caution. But in your journaling, if you find you wake up one day and you're not grateful, first of all, go back and reflect your why. Reflect what it is that you're doing, because you should be doing what is your soul's purpose, and you should be doing something that is bringing you success, because it's you exercising your specific, universally given talents. And if you're not, well, there's a whole nother thing we're going to go into. That's, again, a whole nother episode. But if you're not doing that, and maybe you're starting out from the beginning a little bit, and you want to be a high achiever, but you're not quite there. So let me step back to maybe the 101 class, and you find yourself a little frustrated. And I've been there and I've done that as well. So that's why I want to share this with you. So high achievers, forgive me for stepping back for a moment. This is important. You find yourself in that position, and you wake up and you're frustrated and you're upset, and you're like, I just can't write anything down to be grateful for. I'm going to give you this pass. And achievers, you're probably going to say, yep, I did that, and it worked. Is you get one page. You get one page in your journal that day that you absolutely could not find something to be grateful and have a positive note to write down. You get one page in one day to be angry and to write down, this isn't going the way I planned. I'm not happy with this. And we write what we invite. But if you absolutely cannot find that avenue of gratefulness and cannot see the positivity coming ahead of you in the day, then great. You get one page and one opportunity to write down basically what you're angry about and what you don't like. So be concise, be to the point, don't ramble on, and be negative, quite frankly, and be pissed off on paper. And I think it's a great exercise, because not only you'll get it out. You get it outside of your system, you get it outside of your mind, and you get it onto this piece of paper. And as soon as you, again, your free pass, you get all this scribbled out on one page. There's two things you get to do. I personally, I turn the page over, I go to the back side of that page and I start writing down something great because I've gotten all that negativity out. And now I've created that void where I'm starting to become grateful. And I see gratitude and I see the positivity and I start writing that down. Another thing you can do is if you feel embarrassed and realize, wow, boy, that was awful. Tear that page out and throw it in the trash, right? You got it out, ball it up, throw it in the trash, tear it out of your book. You don't want any part of it. If you want to hold on to it, so be it. You fold the page over and you write your gratitude. Maybe put an X through the page just so you don't read it again by accident, because you really don't want to ruminate too much on that. But that is my exercise 101, is if you're still kind of struggling and you can't find gratitude, you get a page to just write what you're pissed off about. And that, I think, fundamentally will change because again, what I've always said, what we write, we invite. So yeah, you're writing down anger and hostility and frustration and negativity. And I know many people are going, yeah, well, now you're going to invite that. 101, this is a pass. This is how we all have to start. We crawl, we walk, we run. We are crawling at this point. That's why I apologize for stepping back, fellow high achievers. But if, we got to always look back, and that also too is another episode of paying it forward. We'll get there. But this is also part of this habit is it ensures your continuous self-awareness and emotional balance. So if you find yourself in that state, you know what to do, you know how to act, and you know how to get away from that. Fair enough? Okay, welcome back, fellow high achievers. Strong time and energy management. It was the First Lady, Nancy Reagan, I think, who first coined the term just say no. And that was during the 1980s, where they were on a big campaign it was a part of an anti-drug campaign to just say no. It was simple as that, almost like the Nike just do it. Well, you can just say no and not do drugs. That being said, high achievers guard their time, declining requests that don't align with their priorities or values. Again, being in that high state of energy and mindfulness, having that heart of gratitude, you're going to say no with a smile and say, I'd really love to, not now. I think not now is really a great response. It's not that you don't want to. It's just that now is not the best time. You're between meetings. You're, in negotiations. You're doing something. Several times that I've, been in a conversation, a negotiating table with people, and we've had a really successful event, and they would say, "Hey, let's go have a bourbon. Let's go do something. Let's go see a show. Let's, now that we've had a really great success, let's go do this." Well, hey, it's a great way to celebrate. And I really appreciate that they invited me to do something. But high achievers always have something else to do. Always have something else to do. Remember, as we mentioned earlier, time is precious. What you're doing is precious. Your why is precious. So when you're at that high energetic level of knowing your why and what you have to do and how tight your schedule is of 18 to 20 hours a day of moving and growing and building this business, being a megapreneur, well, bourbon sounds great and I love something well-aged, but I don't have time. And quite frankly, it's going to slow you down. Not only, not only the effects of the toxicity and everything that you've worked so hard through the day of gratitude and feeling good and eating right and getting good sleep. And now you're in this celebration mode where you've had great success and, you know, yeah, you just don't have time. I found in my real estate career that I just didn't have time. So many of my clients were like, hey, let's go grab a dinner and a beer and celebrate. This is a great thing. And I'd say, I would love to. I can't now. Let's schedule something a little bit later because I wasn't done, quite frankly. Even though the transaction happened and the sale happened and you got your commission check and everybody at the table was happy, you know, the title company and the lawyers and everybody got paid and they finally were like closing. That was almost like halfway through the process for me because now I had to take this file back to my office, make sure it was organized, give it to my assistant, make sure it was filed properly, set up all of my closing out procedures now that this event took place. I still had a lot of work to do, so I didn't have time to mess around. And quite frankly, when you're doing 20, 30, 40 transactions a year, I don't have a lot of time. And I didn't rest on that specific transaction. I don't really like the term, but it does have some truth to it, so I will share it today. Is that the phrase, you're only as good as your last transaction. Because I had some crummy transactions and I never leveled myself to say, well, I'm as good as that because, yeah, quite frankly, they weren't very exciting. And not to say that the clients weren't important, but this was during the financial crisis of 2008. And I will say a handful of my transactions were through the foreclosure process and properties going under value and just really interesting times in the real estate world. And how do I say it that it wasn't my best as far as a transaction? It wasn't a monetary win, it was a transaction. So saying that you're as good as your last transaction when the sale price of a house was like $20,000 doesn't leave you riding away with high esteem as it did selling a $750,000 property. You drove away from the closing feeling a little different, feeling a little better, a little bit more success, feeling that stronger win with a capital W, right? Looking at it monetarily. And because this is such a general audience, I want to share this. I didn't like that term, but it always kept my feet on the ground as far as, yes, you're as good as your last sale. So if it's been 6 months since your last sale, you're not that good. If it was just yesterday since your last sale, you're pretty good. You know, if you're going to the closing table 3, 4, 5 times a week, you're as good as your last sale, which was just the other day. It's not a bad place to be. Certainly you can be grateful for things. Certainly you're a high achiever, right? So you're only as good as kind of the last thing you did. And if it's been a minute since your last great thing, you probably need to go back to the drawing board to maintain that level of high achiever. You always need to be working towards the next deal. And that's quite frankly what I did. Got done with the closing, filed the folder, and usually tried to schedule or stayed a little later at work where I maybe punched out a couple letters to some potential people because I was at a high. I just had a transaction that took place. And because I was at that high and so energetic and full of that energy, I wanted to emit that out to invite more. So I did a little bit more productive activity, basically prompting that next sale, that next transaction. and not just waiting until the next morning going, oh, let me contact a handful of clients tomorrow. I did it that day. And here's the secret, folks. By doing it that day, I usually would catch people at their off time. When they got home, they would read their email. They were away from work. They could read their email. They had time to think about it and to respond. And here's the magic, which I think it had a little something to do with, again, the aforementioned behaviors, but me being grateful and working out and being in good shape and showing up early to work and coming to my desk and sitting down. Guess what? It was an email from one or two of those individuals that said, I'd love to talk. When can we get together? So see how that works? You can apply this to anything. And all my fellow high achievers out there will attest to this, and they're shaking their head as they try not to drive off the road listening to this podcast, that these are habits. And you do them without thinking, which is a habit. This is how you instill being a high achiever. Now, you also want to learn to delegate, designate, and automate, because you start to understand that time is precious and you can't do everything by yourself, but you also understand that you need to do everything to maintain and continue success and to be at that higher achiever level. So delegating tasks and leveraging things like technology and systems, it frees up more time for the strategic thinking. Frees up time to be able to take a break and feel like you can do it because you have a system that's doing something for you. And always be thinking of ways to innovate. How can I engage with my clients and customers? How can I share with them information that I'm learning? How can I engage with them to start those conversations? Again, all of these things, the world's changed quite a bit since I was doing a lot of things. And so I've watched it evolve from the point of punching out letters to clients and customers to engage that conversation, to email, to text message, to short message, to, quite frankly, not even a message, but just an image. As for instance, Instagram, and you're creating the following. High achievers have their clients and customers following them, which is why, again, in another episode, I think we had already talked about it, is it's to your benefit to have a little bit of an alter ego, if you will, as far as your presence online, to have a personal and a business page. And on your business page, have as many of your clients and customers be subscribers of that page, because quite frankly, now you don't punch out a letter and put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it. You don't even necessarily painstakingly go through the email anymore or even put together a text. Something as simple as, hey, I just listed this house on Instagram on your business page, and your clients and customers are following you and they're like, oh, look, there's that house on Smith Street. Wow, that's exactly what that's where we were looking. Or, hey, I know someone that wants to live on Smith Street. Or, that's the house down the street from our house. Wow, hey, look, Adam's got another listing. And that that prompts a phone call. Hey, I didn't see what the house was listed for. What are they asking for it? Have they made any improvements? Thanks again for helping us buy our house. Again, it starts that conversation that gives you the opportunity as a high achiever to engage in that next transaction. How can I help the next person? And part of this is cultivating, again, supportive relationships. So your clients and customers do feel free to engage with you when you're putting up those posts. Networking and mentorship. High achievers surround themselves with like-minded individuals and mentors who challenge and inspire them. Remember the old saying? Maybe not, but there was a saying that said you're as good as the 5 people you hang around with. Well, there's something to be said for that. And high achievers hang around with people that are growing and that they want to keep up with. Now, don't get this confused with trying to be like the Joneses, which was the proverbial tale of always trying to one up the neighbor. No, you want someone you want many people in your circle that you are continuously at level and or chasing. And let me be specific to say you don't want to, if you don't want to be in a situation where your group is accelerating and you're not. I would have to specifically say question your group if they're accelerating and not keeping you in the loop. If their new innovative ideas are helping their business grow and they're not sharing them with you and you start to fall behind, then I would have to question the participation of the group. Are you participating and are you mimicking and doing the same activities as those in your group, or are you just assuming that the rising tide will float all boats and just their success becomes your success? That's not going to happen. You're learning from them to emulate and to conduct yourself in a similar manner, in which case you may be 2 steps behind, but at the end of the day, their growth is your growth because you're 2 steps behind. But you're still achieving and surpassing others around you. So you are meeting and exceeding your own personal goals as well. They are doing the same. Mentorship. It's always easy to look forward for a mentor. But I want to share that you also need to look behind. You need to pay it forward, and part of paying it forward is to turn around and look behind you. Who is that individual who is exercising these disciplines? Who is that individual who is showing an interest in succeeding and achieving in whatever it is that you're participating in your business? Who's your next CFO, CEO, or COO? Look behind you and find that person, because you're not going to do it all day long. You're going to move up or move out. So if you're a megapreneur with a business, who do you want to all of a sudden run that? If you're still running it, which that's a whole nother series as well, is running your business or owning a business. But if you're busy running your business right now, you got to find somebody, pick somebody, and it can't be random. It needs to be someone who, through your tutelage, has become almost your clone, will do things the way you've done them, will think the way you thought. That's how business continues. We can go back through the history books at some of the major name brands, as well as many smaller companies where, quite frankly, the second and third generation didn't understand how any of it took place. And all they see is that it's a business with its positive or negative attributes. And at the end of the day, they're not working the business. They're just sort of owning it. And eventually it's going to fall apart because it doesn't reflect any of their values. Again, we can get into that in a whole nother episode, but look back and pay it forward. I cannot be more of a stronger proponent to say there are individuals out there who want to succeed and want to achieve. And quite frankly, it's a great feather in your cap to say that you helped someone out who, quite frankly, you're going to be the beneficiary of when they begin to think and act like you and have the same passion and love and heart and gratitude for your business as you did. That's what takes businesses to the next generation, is by continuing that mindset. So that being said, Networking and mentorship is important. And networking opens doors for collaboration as well as new perspectives, seeing how other people are doing things, how they're operating their business. Again, you may not clone or mimic what they're doing, but certain sales steps, certain business building steps that others have done, certain risks that you're like, man, I just don't know enough about it. Well, if you get networking with other individuals, other high achievers, and you realize that what you thought was just an obnoxious risk of borrowing $1 million, and you're like, wow, I don't know if I could do that, because you're in the mindset of interest. You're treating it like a car or a house. And so you're looking at interest payments and you're looking at obligations and you're looking at high achievers don't look at that. They look at that as a small exercise, not only in faith to their business, but they already see that it's taken care of. It's just a step they have to take. They don't see all the zeros. They just see that it's a step they have to take. So they do what they need to do in order to take that step forward. Whether it's getting some cash infusion to their business, whether it's some philanthropy, whether it's getting some angel investors, whatever it is, to boom, I just need $1 million to make this step, and then this step turns into $5 or $10 million, right? But they see the simplicity of I need one to make 5 or 10. Again, they don't see the zeros. They don't get bogged down with, oh my gosh, it's a bunch of interest on a loan. They're not distracted with that. They understand they need to take a step in order to make another step. And part of this is their education and knowledge, either from experience and or networking. So some of this so-called free time that you thought you had available is now going to be occupied with networking and meeting and understanding some different business attributes that you might not already know, that are going to allow you to think gratitude, to think ahead, and to be successful. Part of mentorship and or group ownership is that mutual accountability. Partner with peers and mentors for accountability groups and get together on a regular basis. Set and review each other's goals regularly. It's almost kind of like a truth meeting, if you will, where you sit down with people that you feel comfortable to confide with and just say, hey, I'm really having trouble struggling here in my business with this, or I'm having an issue trying to understand the concept of that. They may have already been through it 10 times, and they could give you 5 different really great examples that all of a sudden simplify what you thought was a difficult task. And this just magically allowed you to move forward. Just as if you have a sort of a simplistic mindset, they're looking at something complicated saying, I'm really having trouble with this tech thing. And if you've already found an innovation to get around the tech thing or the marketing thing, and you share, hey, I found this opportunity, or I found this ability, or this individual can work from home and it's a much lower cost, and they can, put together your content, or they can work on advertising, or they can work on your budget and do your accounting. Man, that's a game changer for somebody. So again, to get with that group of masterminds that are kind of doing the same thing you're doing, or a little different, and you kind of feed off of each other, not necessarily taking business ideas, but sharing your wins and losses through the business and what you've learned. I think it was Napoleon Hill that had his table of advisors, and if you read the book, he didn't have anybody at his table, but he did if you read the book. And I share that because his advisors were in his mind that he was consulting with. He had a board meeting in his mind, but he consulted with those individuals one by one and collectively as a group, and it's how he worked things out. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that we all take the route of Napoleon Hill and stay home and have our own personal board meetings in our head. But what I'm sharing with you is, if that's where you need to start. That's where you should start. And you need to start those conversations. And then you need to start networking with individuals that are in your business or peripheral to your business. One of the things I found, and I guess today's the day I go back to a lot of real estate, is, collaborating with home inspectors and understanding what their job entailed and how they did it, and what they were doing, not only helped me to describe to a client actually what was the process and how this was important taking place, instead of just saying, hey, for your rested assurance, you need a home inspection. Well, that's kind of a blanket statement. But if you could share with a client or customer and say, you ever hear a little creak in the floor and you wonder, wow, I wonder what's under that floor? Well, for a small investment prior to buying a house, you can actually pay someone who's going to go crawl in that dark spot of the house and find out what's there, and give you that rested assurance that it's either what's supposed to be there, or there's things that aren't supposed to be there, or that it's not in the best condition, or it's in great condition. And how much better would you feel if you knew this information? Right? So kind of how you explain things. And I got that from mentors, because I didn't think of it. I studied people that were already doing my craft and having those conversations, and sometimes shadowing them and understanding, why things were done. Land survey. What was important about a land survey and how they conducted it. It certainly has gone leaps and bounds, but it's high achievers understand. And it's not necessarily that they spend a whole lot of time studying a craft, but they do understand the gist of it, where it's enough that they could explain it or explain the importance of the event. As well, shared commitment often leads to greater consistency and follow through. If you're answering to yourself, you can kind of sometimes give yourself okay answers that you're all right with. But I found with my networking group and my mastermind group that when I show up and I don't have a great answer, they kind of go, well, okay, if you didn't do what you said you were going to do this week, what did you do? Well, I did this, this, and this. Okay. So at least you did something, but was that beneficial to your business and to your why and to your goals? And depending on how you answered that question, whether it was yes, it was beneficial, or no, you were messing around, it's that level of accountability to someone that really doesn't have any stake in your business except for just being a mastermind, a fellow achiever, really kind of puts you in the cold chair where you don't want to let that person down. And so next week, you're going to come to the table with I did this. And I often find with my mastermind, just because I have I have a competitive nature to myself, is that I always want to bring more to the table. When I'm asked, what did I do? I keep going, and they're like, okay, 3's enough, but I have 5 or 6 or whatever it is. I have too much, but I always want to bring something to the table, and you want to do the same if you want to be a high achiever. The daily habits of high achievers can seem simple on the surface, but their true power lies in consistent execution with clear sense of purpose, by clarifying your goals, optimizing your routines, committing to lifelong learning, and sustaining a healthy lifestyle. You create a powerful formula for success. See, remember, it's not about perfection, but the intentional action repeated over time, because what you do daily with purpose ultimately shapes the results you experience. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of High Achievers. Hope you learned a little something. If you have, click like or subscribe and or share with a friend or family member that you know this may be helpful to, as well as to subscribe for other episodes that we continuously try to bring more and more content to help you not only learn how to live your best life, but to how to have a successful business and how to always keep yourself motivated. Remember, habits are powerful things. So what we start today becomes our routine tomorrow. Thanks again for tuning in, and always seek knowledge. Now let's go out and make it a great day.